Hello, and welcome to Monumental, where we sit down with entrepreneurs, leaders, visionaries, and big thinkers making monumental change. Here's your host, Evan Holiday.
Welcome to Monumental. I'm your host, Evan Holiday, and today we have on the show with us Mr. Devin Hubbard. Devin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing amazing. How about yourself?
Doing well. Glad to have you on the show today. Devin and I had met. We were just talking about. We're like, man, where did we first meet? It was at a Best Ever conference about a year and a half ago, and that's what I love about these conferences is you never know. I mean, this was 2 years ago almost, and here we are reconnecting again today on the podcast and getting to dive into his story, his learnings, his experience, and share all of that with you guys today. So a little bit about Devin before we get started. He is a full-time realtor, investor, and developer with his group, Hubbard Realty Group. He is the president of Northern Utah Real Estate Investor Association, and he has wholesaled and flipped. He has rentals, and he has just recently gotten into developing multifamily in the beautiful state of Utah. And so with that, Devin, let's just dive right into a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today.
Awesome. So again, I guess I should start by saying thank you for having me on here today. It's good to see you again. It's like you said, it's been a little while, but yeah, looking forward to it and appreciate the opportunity. How I got started was I worked a 9-to-5 for about 12 years. And I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. And for a long time, I knew that I always wanted to be in real estate somehow. I just didn't ever figure out until the last few years how that would kind of pan out. And so 6 years ago, I went to a Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar.
Nice.
And ended up sitting side by side with a now friend of mine, but he introduced me to a local group that teaches real estate investing. It's a company called Renatus. And they're throughout the whole country, but it's a local company here in Utah that teaches real estate investing and brings in pretty high-end people from all over the country to teach their courses, and then they record them and you can just kind of watch them at your convenience. And so this friend of mine introduced me to this company, and as I was working my 9-to-5, my wife was watching classes while I was working, and then at night we would sit in bed with the laptop and just watch hours and hours and hours of classes until we kind of built that knowledge and confidence to, go take action and actually start making stuff happen. And so that was about 6 years ago. Summer of 2014 is when we kind of took the dive into really getting into real estate, and it's just kind of snowballed from rentals and from wholesaling and flipping. And then 2 years decided to get my real estate license. And then, as you mentioned, just in the last year and a half, I've started to get into multifamily development. So here we are.
It's quite a meteoric rise going all the
Yeah.
way up to multifamily development. I love that.
Yeah, I enjoy the residential stuff, but I realize if I want to enjoy the I guess the residual side of things, $300 on a single family home, passive income on a monthly basis isn't too exciting on a single family. So I figured, if I can do something on a much bigger scale and have 300 units or something, and cash flow a couple of thousand or 10,000 a month, that's a lot more exciting than 300 a month. So I figured the amount of time and effort it might take to get a few small single family properties, I could probably do the same thing and get into much bigger projects. So that's where we've kind of evolved over the years. So
I like where your head's at. That's what I tell everybody all the time. My coaching clients, even just anybody that reaches out, I'm like, there's just so much power in numbers, right? It's, you're going to, in a lot of cases, you're going to put in the same amount of effort and energy in a 1 unit or a 2 unit as you are going to do a 10 or 20 unit. And the same goes for 10 to 20 unit versus a 200 unit. And the impact and the residual and the long-term financial freedom and security that brings along with it is just tenfold for maybe a little bit more work. So I highly recommend it to everybody listening. Think bigger, just like Devin has. So I want to dive into the development, but let's first go into, I want to know more about when you first made that decision and said, hey, this is when I'm going to go all in on real estate. Did you just one day decide I'm going to quit everything and just start real estate? Like, how did that transition work?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So I did it kind of part-time. As I mentioned, I had my 9-to-5 for about 12 years. And in the summer of 2014 is kind of when we started to educate ourselves. And it was a 3-year process. So it was basically December of 2017. I don't remember dates very well, but that was a date I'll probably always remember. But December 1st of 2017 is when I basically gave my 2-week notice that I was done. And those first 3 years were a lot of obviously learning experiences and gaining that knowledge and building that network. Because as you know firsthand, it's all about relationships. And in that 3rd year, we made twice as much in real estate part-time as I was making at my full-time job at the time. And so luckily, I love my wife, and luckily she was the one that actually like nudged me out and said, it's time to do it full-time. If you can do it on a very part-time basis on nights and weekends and make twice as much part-time than you are at your full-time job, it's time to do this, full-time. So I had her blessing, which was huge.
Yeah. I've never heard of anybody saying that they've been able to reach double their income and their part-time job based on their full-time. That's crazy.
Yeah. So we were blessed, and it didn't happen overnight, but after 3 years, it was quite the process and experience. But yeah, we've been doing it 3 years now, full-time. And I think I tell everybody that I'm probably pretty unemployable because it's just too much. It's too much fun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
So what for you have been some of the building blocks of success? Like, what has led to your success, do you think? What are a few things that have led to that?
I would say just not giving up. As easy as that probably sounds, just some days suck real bad, whether you work a 9-to-5 or whether you do real estate full-time. So I guess just being consistent, putting in the time and the effort. And as I mentioned previously, the relationships have been huge. The more you know, and the more you're willing to go out and network and meet people and go to RIAs or different local, meetup groups and different things, take advantage of those and get to know people, and then not try and see what they can do for you, but what you can do for them and add value to them. And it will always, come back. I believe in karma 100%. And so, just those relationships and being able to take advantage of those opportunities to learn as much as possible have been huge.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that you have, really 3 main points: not giving up, consistency, and building relationships and your network. Because those are 3 very powerful things. And like you said, I mean, the putting yourself out there, the relationships, the building, the learning, the growing, that all comes from asking questions, from being open, from putting yourself in the right room at the right time. And that's something you did. You're now the president of the Real Estate Association there in Northern Utah. How did that come about?
It wasn't even something I necessarily wanted to do or even thought about, but I was just consistently going to their meetings, and they had one guy that was kind of fizzling out, and so they just said, you've always been consistent, and they've kind of seen, I guess, my growth and commitment over the last couple of years. And so they just said, if you're willing to do it, we'd love to have you. And I thought it was a no-brainer to do it. So that's been almost a year now.
Nice. What has it been like? What have you learned from leading a group like that?
Well, as I mentioned before, it's been a little bit different with the 2020 COVID craziness. A lot of Zoom meetings and a lot of conference calls, but it's a great way, even a better way, I guess, to network and get to know people. Being up in front of people more often puts you a little bit out of your comfort zone, which is, at least for me, which is good. And I feel like it's giving me an opportunity to develop more leadership skills, which I feel like is always a good skill and sometimes hard to come by nowadays. But it's been a good opportunity to get to know, the guest speakers that we bring in on a monthly basis, and I guess more opportunity to interact and be upfront, I guess, with so many people. So it's been good.
The moment we've all been waiting for, at least I have, the development. Let's dive into that.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how that came about and kind of the synopsis of it and where you are today with it.
Cool. So it was actually the end of last year, so it's almost been a year now. And I have a pretty good relationship with some of the local city people, and met with one of the city managers and just said, what would you like to see happen here in the city? And I sent him an email previously, just kind of what my expectations were and the reason that I'd like to meet with him. And a week later we met, and he basically laid out about 8 to 10 different projects that were either available or potential deals that would be available in the city boundaries. And so I live in South Ogden City. And so these were all projects basically in my own backyard that were either on the market or he knew of a potential deal, being there. And so nothing was, great right off the bat, but I followed up with him a few months later. And long story short, he knew of a project that was supposedly going to be a hotel, but then the university that's only about a block away got approved for that same franchise for a hotel. And so the owners knew that they couldn't or didn't want to compete with a franchise that close. And so at that point, they decided to sell it. And we found out about it. We were able to contact the owners and their agent before it ever hit the market and worked out a deal. And so that was December of last year. We got it under contract, went through due diligence.
Before you got under contract, how did you decide you wanted to get into development? What made you decide? Because you had mainly been in single family and some multifamily at that point, right?
Yeah, a lot of the classes I'd been taking, the books I'd been reading had talked about opportunities for developing for highest and best use and different things. And like you mentioned before, just that mindset of thinking bigger. And I was like, man, I want storage units. I want apartment buildings. I want that cash flow of something much bigger than just a smaller single family home or smaller multifamily project. And so when they told us what the zoning was on this project, I was like, I was all over it. So it's, but yeah, we got it under contract in December and we ended up closing in April or May. And we're now to the point where we're getting close to we went through a development agreement with the city. And then we started out with 45 units when we were doing our due diligence. And then we got our engineers and architects involved, got it up to 65 units. And then we did about 2 months of just vetting contractors, because again, this was brand new for us. So we hadn't, I wouldn't say we had no idea what we were doing, but we definitely, we were pretty green, And so we took a long time to pick our general contractor, realizing how big of a deal that was, and finally made a decision on one where it's a local company, and that's all they've done is multifamily for about 15 years.
Yeah.
And not only do they build single family, but they build their own projects, and they've basically still own projects that they've built from 15 years ago when they first got started. So that was a big deal for us. And now, as I mentioned before, we were starting at 45 to 65 units, and now with their help, we're looking at, depending on what we can squeeze in there, 104 to 116 units. So we've basically been able to almost double that unit count, which is obviously huge.
Yeah. So walk me through, I mean, most people that are listening, if they've never done development before, even, I've had guys talk to me that have done, thousands of units acquisition. They've never even done development before. So where did you gain the confidence and the know-how to be able to do something like that?
Luckily, I had a partner that had some experience in smaller single family and smaller multifamily development, but it was basically at anywhere from a duplex to a fourplex to single family. And so we relied on a lot of contacts, a lot of networking, and just between the two of us, it was a lot of phone calls and a lot of probably a lot of prayers. but yeah, once we found the general contractor, I felt like that was our that's when we kind of really hit gold, I think, not only with our being able to basically double the unit count, but they've also partnered with us to the point where they were the ones that they're going to sign on the line for the construction loan. And so it's just going to be a 50-50 partnership with us and them. And so they've got skin in the game and obviously want to see this succeed as much as we do. So that's been a great way for us to be able to tag team with them, learn and grow with them along the way, and in the future, hopefully be able to maybe just do our own without, but yeah. So definitely look towards finding others that have done it, that can coach and train and guide you along the way, because just doing it on your own is incredibly long and frustrating and painful.
Yes, definitely. I'm glad you touched on, I mean, like your GC, having that relationship or building that relationship and finding that person, finding that right fit to build into your team is massively important, especially when you're coming at this and it's new to you. You want to find somebody that's experienced, that's trusted, that has integrity, that knows what they're doing, and that can basically help guide you through the process. And especially, I mean, development, real estate in general, there's so many different pieces to it. There's property management, there's your legal team, there's your down to like somebody helping you like make sure you have utilities, or it's just, there's so many different pieces to the puzzle, just real estate in general. But then you add on the layer of building something from scratch, and you're adding in probably 100 more layers of variables and decisions that have to be made. And you, as now a developer, you're having to go through those decisions, but going through it the first time, it massively helps if you can bring in the right team and spend that extra time. Like you said, 2 months worth of just vetting out different GCs. That's important. But I got to know, so you bought the land, you found the project in December, you bought it in April, you said, the land, and then you're moving forward with development shortly. What was that like, buying land before your development's ready, before everything's ready to go? Because at that point, you really are committing to, at least somewhat financially committing to a project.
Yeah, and luckily we had a partner. We did bring in a third guy on our side before we partnered with our GC that was very very savvy financially. He had just sold a business and had a good chunk of change, and he was looking to invest it. And my partner had a good relationship with him, and we spent months and months with him. And he was the one that basically came in and paid cash for the land to help us close the deal, and obviously had his blessing. And so that was one more layer and confirmation that we knew what we were doing, that even at that point the numbers worked. At that point that was 65 units still before we even got it up to the unit count that we have now. And so that was the risk that we took, was closing on it and realizing that that with the development agreement, that was another huge factor too, is we worked that through the city. And before, zoning only allowed us to have 3 levels, but now we'll have 2 levels of podium parking with 4 levels of housing on top of it. So that was quite the feat to work through planning commission and city council, which I never had any experience with either. But yeah, it's basically every step of the way has been, a new little rung in the ladder to help me get to where we're at. And again, I still feel like I'm just getting started in the whole world of real estate, but it's been a really cool learning experience the last 10 to 12 months.
I love that. Yeah, walk us through the planning commission and approval process with the city and entitlements and how you were able to do that.
Yeah, so luckily when we really started getting aggressive and we did have our general contractor, that was when I think was probably the biggest pivot with working with the city, was when we had them to be able to meet with us in our meetings and show what they've done and show their portfolio and bring up projects. This is, they were able to say, hey, these are the projects we're currently doing, or these are projects we've just barely finished. And knowing that we're meeting what the city wants. And so that was, I think, the biggest factor, is once we brought our general contractor in the game and they had the experience to work with the city and kind of hold our hands, that was huge.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. And again, that goes back to like your team. And in a lot of cases, you don't necessarily need to have the experience. You just have to have somebody on your team with the experience. And that immediately gives the whole team that experience in working together. So that's a crucial piece. So where are you in the process now?
Yeah, so we actually just had a meeting earlier today with the city. We're getting closer, and we're hoping to have approval from them and a building permit probably within the next month or 2. So if we can keep the snow from falling, or we can probably break ground before the end of this year. But if it gets wet too early with the type of soil we've got, then we'll probably have to hold out until spring.
So what has it been like as far as financing that development from a lender standpoint and the equity standpoint?
So yeah, the cool thing is, I think I mentioned the general contractors were willing to, sign on the dotted line when it actually came to the construction part, which wasn't little. That was roughly a $15 million construction loan on this. And luckily we found a local bank. We had about 2 or 3 commonly used banks that everybody referred us to. And one of the local banks here had about 15 different projects that they were underwriting. And I don't know if they were all as similar as ours, but they said out of the 15 different projects they had in hand that they were underwriting, they liked ours the best. So that was, whatever that's worth, that was kind of, extra confidence and that peace of mind, like, hey, like this is, I think we've got something really solid here. And we're located right next to a hospital, and within about 5 minutes to a hospital, and probably within 10 minutes to a university. So it's a pretty ideal location, and a good part of town.
Nice. Yeah, that was going to be one of my next questions was what sold you on the site and what got you excited about it?
Yeah, there's really not much land left in South Ogden. But yeah, it's an acre and a half of land that hasn't been touched. It's never been developed. And so luckily we found the right one, and I guess just got lucky. Yeah, karma, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. You put out and you give back what you get back what you put out.
Yep.
That's amazing, man. Well, big props to you first off.
Thank you.
As far as what does it look like? Are you guys doing an equity raise on that, or you have equity already lined up?
So our general contractors are basically rolling all of their fees and everything right back into the project. Before COVID, the bank would do a 75% LTV, but with COVID, we're looking like 70%. But we do have options where there's some gap funding that can help us kind of fill that. But right now, our general contractors say they've got everything lined up where people will gladly come in and step in to fill that gap. So we were ready to start raising capital and finding some additional partners, but our general contractors are so experienced and I guess so loved that they've already got that figured out and taken care of at this point.
Man, that sounds like a good partner.
Yeah.
I love it.
We actually, some of the other developers that we talked to have told us they've been developers for about 20 years that are here local. And they said for a long time, they would always send their projects out to bid because they do a variety of multifamily and commercial. And they said in the last 5 years, all they send it to is just Highmark, toward that general contractor that we're using. And so they trust them so much that they don't even send it out to bid to anybody else. They just hire them whenever they've got a project that pencils. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What part of this whole process do you enjoy the most?
I would say I'm definitely a people person. So as many times as I've probably brought up the relationships, like just being able to, I guess a combination of being able to meet and get to know more people in the real estate world that I haven't known before now. And then also just being able to learn something way different than I've ever experienced before. So yeah, I guess a combination of the relationships and also just the learning experience along the way has been pretty huge and pretty exciting to be a part of.
And what would you say would be your advice for our Monumental listeners that want to get into development?
Find people that you can trust, that you feel like you can trust, that are willing to help you. And again, if you be willing to take somebody to lunch or, jump on a call with somebody and just say like, these are what I want to do. These are the things, kind of give them specifics on what your goals are and what you want to do. And if there's a way for you to help them and you can bring deals to them and partner with them, that's always a win-win. And, just finding those right people that are willing to do that. And I've now luckily been able to find other general contractors and developers that are doing basically the same thing. And so I'm looking at partnering with them as well as an agent to bring them potential deals and kind of partner with them on those projects as well with bigger multifamily and storage units and townhomes. So I feel like, again, I'm just getting my foot in the door, but I feel like we're headed in the right direction. So.
Well, again, big props to you because I've had so many people ask me, hey, I want to get into development, but you jumped in the deep end and you just went ahead and did it, and you figured out a way to do it, and you were consistent and persistent about it, and you found the right partners, and you aligned yourselves accordingly. So, guys, take in what Devin's saying because he's obviously doing something right. So again, big props to you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So as far as next steps, kind of big vision for Devin and Hubbard Realty Group, where do you see that heading?
Yeah, like I said, I feel like we're just getting started. So I want to do more multifamily projects. I want to do, whether that's development or value add type projects. I want to do storage units. I want to do townhomes. I guess I'm just the guy that's willing to try anything that I'm interested in. Like I mentioned before, I've done flipping, wholesaling, rentals, and if you like it, keep doing it. If you don't like it, find something else that you're intrigued in, or something else that you like better. And so there's no right or wrong way or right or wrong road to take in real estate. There's a million ways to make $1 million in real estate, and a lot more than that. So I just feel like I'm wanting to kind of get a taste of everything, and just kind of continue expanding and building on what we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like we talked about before the episode started, you're the father of five awesome kids. So how are you able to balance, time with family, spending quality time with family, and putting in quality time to your business?
That is a good question. That's a daily juggling act. Some days are better than others, I will admit, but I should first say my wife is amazing. She stays home with the kids. So we've got a 10-year-old that's in school, an 8-year-old in school, a 6-year-old in school, and then we've got a 17-month-old boy that we adopted. We've had him since birth. We fostered him from the day he was born, but then we adopted him the beginning of June of this year. So we had him as a foster baby for quite a while, and then just adopted him a few months back. And ironically, my wife gave birth to number 5 the last week of June. So we literally had baby number 4 and 5 in the same month of this year.
Wow.
So it's fun. But yeah, we call the 3 older ones, we call the bigs, and the 2 younger ones we call the littles. So we've got the bigs and the littles. But the bigs can kind of, they're not 100% independent, but they can usually, luckily, fairly independent. But yeah, the littles, usually I've got one and my wife's got one, or one of us have both of them. And luckily our oldest is a girl. She's 10, Michaela's 10, and luckily she's a good little mommy. So she helps out quite a bit too. So that's helpful.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah.
And then one other thing I wanted to bring up, I saw you had done some Wim Hof. Tell us a little bit more about your experience with Wim Hof.
So I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I did that. I hadn't even heard of it, but my broker at my real estate office was kind of the one that set it up, and I was like, why not? And so it's a breathing technique that helps, basically, depending on what you're wanting to focus on. It's a good way to get rid of stress and anxiety, and just take the weight of the world out of you a little bit, and just all through breathing and concentration and focus and relaxation. And then we ended it with a 2-minute dive into ice water. And so that was, luckily it was warm outside. So, but yeah, we spent 2 minutes in an ice bucket, and a bucket full of ice water. And basically all you're trying to do during those 2 minutes is just focus on controlling your breathing. And obviously you want to do a lot of other things like jump out and scream or whatever, but
Yes.
all you're trying to do is focus on controlling your breathing and calming your mind. And it was a pretty cool experience. I'd for sure do it again.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've done something similar to Wim Hof
Okay.
with a lot of different breathing exercises, and then we jumped into an ice bath. for
Okay.
an indeterminate amount of time. We weren't told ahead of time, and that was almost the most painful part, was not knowing when it was going to end.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Yeah, it really kind of like, it opens up your mind. It helps you in a lot of ways. Like afterward, when I got out of the ice bath, I was like so energized, like some of the best energy
Yeah.
I've ever had. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm on top of the world. Just
Yes.
having ice bath, like it's crazy.
Yeah, they actually recommend doing it. At least the guy that was our trainer, he recommends doing it once a week, and I haven't done it again since. But
Nice.
I keep telling my wife we have a pretty good size tub in the house, and so I keep telling my wife I need to do it. So it's probably time again. But yeah, like you said, it's you get done and you're like, holy smokes, I feel amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible in the moment, but phenomenal once it's over.
Yeah.
You should do it with the kids. Do it with all five of them. Take turns.
Yeah.
Train
That
them while they're young.
Yeah, that would be a good one to film for sure.
I love it. Well, let's dive into our monumental questions. What does success mean to you?
That is a great question. I would say when I first started, it was all about financial freedom and things, and that's great. But at the end of the day, I feel like if you're progressing and you're happy, I don't know if you can beat if success can be anything better than that, at least in my opinion. If you're progressing and you're happy, I feel like again the money side and other things will help, but will come naturally. But yeah, I feel like progress and just being happy is true success.
Yeah. What about daily habits or morning rituals that you have?
So I get up at about 5:30 every morning. I usually go to the gym about 4 to 5 times a week, and that's been huge for me. That's kind of with 5 kids, there's not a lot of quiet time. And so being able to get up early before anybody else and exercise and just think and have some peace and quiet, that's always helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That morning time is nice.
Yeah.
What about favorite book or book you're currently reading?
Um, So I've actually got one right here, and it's I'm not a big reader. I love Audible and I love listening to stuff, which is a little bit easier when you're always on the go.
Yeah.
But U Squared, and it's literally like you could probably read it in like I don't know an hour or less. So it's probably not even 50 pages long, but it talks about basically quantum leaps and you just the mental side of things, and we often give ourselves limitations for whatever reason, just the way we grew up or what society tells us what we should or shouldn't think or what we should and shouldn't do. But yeah, thinking outside the box, and it's called U Squared, and it's super easy read, but it helps you think outside the box and help kind of break those limiting beliefs and know that you can do much bigger and better things than you maybe currently are.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up because I believe that's like sitting on our coffee table. My fiance Jeanette has bought it and read it, and I haven't read it yet. But now I'll add that to the list.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. Well, Devin, phenomenal episode. Loved hearing your story, how you got into real estate, how really you're making massive impact in your community, and also being able to, I mean, to be able to do a development at this point in your career is phenomenal. So I commend you for that again. It's a huge learning lesson for everybody else out there to remember to think big, surround yourself with others, put in the work, don't give up, and you will find out a way to figure out how to do whatever you want in this life. So thank you again, Devin. How can our Monumental listeners follow you or reach out to you or connect with you?
Yeah, Devin Hubbard on Facebook, and Devin R. Hubbard on Instagram are probably the two best ways. I probably spend a little bit more time than I should on there, but again, being a people person and liking to learn, it's a good way to network. So yeah, Devin Hubbard on Facebook and Devin R. Hubbard on Instagram.
Guys, connect with Devin, and he's just full of value. So make sure you to connect with him or follow him. And guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave us a review and let us know what you enjoyed. And guys, with that, have a monumental day.